and stuff, because I spend my days talking at people, and I like it better when we talk together and get to discuss things. So let me go ahead and share my screen here. Let's see. Sorry, I've got to find the right screen here to show. You'd think I don't do this all day, every day, because I can't seem to find the one thing I'm looking for here. I just realized that it's not going to show on my screen because it's in an incognito window. So give me just a second. I have to pull it up on a different screen of mine. I apologize for not being ready with that.
It's okay.
I didn't realize incognito windows wouldn't show on a Zoom, but they sure don't. All right, now let me try sharing my screen. Let's see what happens. Okay, so a lot of we talk a lot about healthy relationships and how to spot them, but what this really is about is what love looks like, and some of the different stages of love, and some of the different ways that love can appear in people's lives and in their relationships. And to realize that none of these are right or wrong, none of these are good or bad. All of these are just different styles of relationship. And much like everything in reproductive health, as long as both people are happy and consensual in what is happening in the relationship, then it's a good relationship. There's none of what we're going to talk about is inherently bad. They're just different styles of love. And so Robert Sternberg developed this triangular theory of love that has 3 components. And with those 3 components, it makes up 8 different types of love. And so the 3 components that different relationships are going to have is going to be intimacy, passion, and commitment. And so intimacy is it's that measure of self-disclosure. It's how close you get with somebody when it comes to knowing you, right? So in this instance, intimacy has nothing to do with sex and has everything to do with how well you know somebody and how much of yourself you share with them, truly about self-disclosure and like just getting to know each other. And passion is the sex part. So passion is that wanting to be physical with somebody, wanting to be near them, wanting to potentially be sexually intimate, but just wanting to have that desire to touch and hug and be close with them. And that third commitment is commitment. And, that sounds pretty obvious. That's the desire to be in it for the long haul. And I think the biggest thing with commitment is that mutual desire that we're going to work through whatever it is that comes our way. And we're not just going to give up and we don't have a foot out the door, but we're actually going to try to make this work for the long haul. And so when you look at the triangle, each corner of a triangle has one of those components. And with those, it makes up 8 different types of love. And so what those 8 are is like, infatuation, romantic, companionate, fatuous, consummate, empty, and non-love. And so what I want to do with you guys, just to kind of talk about these is, so like on this one, you can see the 8 different types over here on the side. And this first one is going to have passion and nothing else. And so there's no intimacy, there's no commitment. And I want you guys to guess what kind of what type of love do you think that would be with just passion? And I know you don't necessarily know what all these words mean, so it's just a guessing game. Maybe see if you can base it on some of the words you know that are related to some of these words. But if there's just passion in a relationship and there's no intimacy and there's no commitment, what type of relationship do you think that's going to be?
Probably infatuation.
Infatuation, absolutely. So what word up here, well, it is infatuation, I guess. I don't even need to say what word up here. That is 100% infatuation, right? That's straight up nothing but that physical piece. So discussion I'd love to have, are there like pros to this kind of relationship? Like what are some good things that why might somebody be in a relationship like this?
I think maybe for experience. I don't know, just from my experience of having friends that have been in relationships that they're just having sex and there's nothing else except for that, kind of seems like they just want to almost get it over with and have experience before they develop an actual relationship.
Okay, that's a really good, I mean, I think that's a pretty common reason to get into this kind of relationship is for experience. Can you guys think of any other reasons somebody might choose this type of relationship? Do any of the rest of you know anybody that are in these kinds of relationships? The sex only stuff?
Yeah, I feel like it's something you see kind of often in some high schools. And I guess I know some people who um, don't really look for anything more than like the sex, and that's all that the relationship is to them, just because it's, maybe it's just like a high school thing to do. And I think it might come down to experience, but it also might come down to social standings and stuff like that.
Absolutely. So social standings is a real thing. And I think some people are afraid also. I think that some people get into this kind of relationship because they're afraid of feeling real feelings or digging into those, or maybe they have parents who were divorced, or they don't have good role models for committed long-term relationships, and so there might be a fear, and so they might stay in this corner just because it's easy, and it's not a scary place to be for a lot of people. And again, there's nothing inherently wrong with this type of relationship if you know that's what you're in. If you know that's what you're doing and everybody knows that's the game you're playing, then that's perfectly fine. If both people are just looking for experience, or trying to get something out of the way, or whatever, as long as both people know that this is nothing but sex, then that's a consensual, healthy relationship for those two people.
I have a question.
Yeah, please.
Regarding that. So if it's perfectly like healthy to be in a relationship that is just like not committed, then why is there like a stigma against people that do that, like calling them sluts or like playboys or whatever? Like, why is there such a stigma against it if it's okay?
Because we still live in a very Puritan society, unfortunately, that I wish I had a good answer to that question, because I question that a lot too. Like, why do we still believe that something's wrong with this? Because when it really comes down to, when it boils down to everything, as long as something is consensual between two people, it is an okay thing to do. And it doesn't matter what that is or what the rest of society thinks about that act or that behavior, as long as the two people who are engaged in the behavior or the relationship together agree that this is okay, that's an okay thing to do. Now, our society is not going to see that way all the time, and there's going to be a lot of things that people will have to fight against when they engage in relationships that go against what society's norms say or are the right kind. And that really is unfortunate, because in my personal opinion, there's a good time and there's a good place for experimenting with yourself and your sexuality. And infatuation relationships aren't for everybody. That's not something everybody wants or needs. But some people do. Some people want the experience, and some people want to learn themselves physically in a way that doesn't demand anything more of them, intimacy wise or commitment wise. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that society is, we're very Puritan still. We have a lot of beliefs and ideals that that are shameful about sex, even though sex is the most natural thing that humans can engage in. You know, we are 100% sexual beings from the day we're born until the day we die. And as are all animals who reproduce sexually, you know, we just are. And to try to pretend that we're not, or to erase that part of ourselves is unhealthy. And we see that in so many ways in our society, the ways that our ideas about sex have turned unhealthy. Through we see it in porn and the way we advertise everything through sex, and then shame people for those same behaviors if they do it in private. We see it in our sexual assault and violence rates. All of those things are because of this silly belief that there's something wrong with sex and the people who enjoy having it, or admit that they enjoy having it, because most people enjoy it, but not everybody wants to admit that, you know. And I really do wish I had a better answer than some long-winded discussion, but we very much live in a Puritan society still, and this is one of those things that Betsy and I are wishing and hoping to change, and it's youth like you who are giving me hope that someday we will get this changed, and our ideas about sex can change nationally and societally, because it does have to start with small groups of people, the way we talk about things and the way we share our ideas with other people. You know, what you guys are doing is the start of that grassroots. So, all right, we've got the next one that I'm going to jump into. This one has intimacy, but it's lacking commitment and passion. So if it's got intimacy, but no commitment and passion, what do you think this one is going to be? Another little clue is that a lot of friendships begin this way.
Like, maybe?
Absolutely. Absolutely. This is like, this is, and this isn't like, right? This is just liking somebody. And it starts with getting to know them. And that's why intimacy is the only thing on here, is because in order to form a friendship or the baseline of any relationship that's not just sex, you have to get to know each other and have something in common, or learn enough about each other to want to spend time together. So a lot of, you know, romantic or intimate, sexually intimate relationships might start with like, but a lot of them don't progress from here. And this is really truly just the basis of a friend. Might not be a best friend or a lifelong friend because there's no commitment, but it's still just a friend. It's somebody you enjoy hanging out with. This could be your mom, this could be your brother or your sister or your cousin, right? Because it's just about knowing each other really well, and just enjoying each other's company for who you are. One of the problems with this kind of relationship is that a lot of people misinterpret getting to know each other and intimacy for something romantic. And so one person might think that this, you know, 2-hour-long conversation where we're getting to know each other is the same as falling in love. And the other person is like, hey man, I just thought we were getting to know each other. And so with like, and with a lot of friendships between people who are sexually attracted to each other, there can be a lot of confusion in this kind of relationship. If one person is feeling more than just friendship like, it can cause, you know, a lot of problems, because it really is easy to misinterpret getting to know somebody for being something bigger than what it is, especially if you don't have a lot of intimate friends that know you well. And this is a mistake too that a lot of people make early in a relationship. If they're trying to start like a dating or romantic type relationship, a lot of people will share too much too fast, and you know, kind of create a scary place in the relationship where it's like, whoa, that's a lot to know about somebody on the first date. But for the person sharing, it feels like, that's where it feels like a bigger thing. Like, this person knows me so well. They already know all my deepest secrets, and they feel really intimate and close with that person. And the other person's like, man, that was a lot of info for the first date, you know? So I don't know, in my experience and from talking to people, this style of relationship tends to be one of the most confusing for people. Because it's hard to have both people in the exact same place with this, if there's sexual attraction between the two. So as simple as it sounds like it should be, just to have intimacy and like somebody, this one really is confusing for a lot of people. So does anybody feel like is there any stories, sharing anything you want to say about this one? People you know that have been in this. Have any of you guys ever had that experience or seen people in that experience of they thought something was more than the other person? This is a pretty common place. So, all right, I'm going to go to that next one that I have on here. This one has passion. Where's all my thingies? They're not coming up. This one has passion and intimacy, but no commitment. So what do you think that might be? Passion and intimacy, but no commitment.
Fatuous?
Sorry, what was that?
Could it be fatuous? I don't know.
It could be, but it's not. It's a good guess. This one actually this one's a tricky one for most people. This is not what most people guess this word to mean.
Is it non-love?
It is not. So here's my clue down at the bottom. This one is romantic love. And the movies make it sound like romantic love is what everybody wants out of life, right? This is the be all end all. But in real life, romance and romantic love consists of passion and intimacy. So you get to know each other and you really enjoy each other's physical bodies and all that physical stuff, but there isn't any commitment. And so this is, for a lot of people, this is that falling in love phase of the relationship where commitment might grow later. You know, you might end up committed to each other, but at the beginning, what you're feeling before you're ready for that commitment is just this high sense of passion and this really strong connection because you're getting to know each other. This is a great place to be. There's nothing wrong with being in this place. And for a lot of people, that passion and that intimacy carry them into a place where they can also incorporate the commitment. But for some people, it fizzles, right? So there's a lot of relationships that start out really strong with all this intimacy and all this passion, and they're so in love and everything's going really great. But then maybe the passion fades a little, just enough. And if they haven't already secured the commitment to each other and they haven't already decided we want to work through things, then a little bit of loss of passion or a little bit of loss of intimacy will eventually erode the relationship because they haven't already decided, let's be together. Let's make this work no matter what, right? And unfortunately, this kind of relationship can even happen after a marriage, right? Like even after you've somewhat said you've committed to each other. A lot of marriages, and I hate to say it this way, but a lot of marriages are more talk than they are substance. That's why we have such a high divorce rate in this country, unfortunately. And for a lot of people, they get married in the height of their passion and their intimacy before they've really discussed commitment. And they just think that commitment is the next step. And so they get married and do these things, but still within that marriage, if the passion fades a tiny bit or the intimacy fades a tiny bit, that relationship still ends up going away. So I guess my point with that is that commitment is something that's inside. It's not necessarily something that's from a piece of paper or a legal document or a ceremony, right? It's something that you have to truly believe in. Commitment is a day-to-day decision that has to be made in a relationship. And so even in marriages where they did have the commitment to start with, if the commitment fades even a little and then they lose passion or intimacy, again, you can erode that relationship, because that commitment really, it's super important, but it has to come from inside, and it has to be a daily decision, a decision that today I'm going to fight for this relationship. And then you wake up tomorrow and say, today I'm still going to fight for this relationship. And the minute you stop deciding to fight for the relationship, the commitment will start to erode, and it'll start to fade just enough. And unfortunately, that does happen in a lot of relationships. I guess a lot of people don't think about commitment as being a daily decision. They think about commitment as being something that I do this one time, I'm committing to you when I get married, and I'm committing to you when I put that ring on my finger or whatever. But again, that's just a piece of paper or a symbol on your hand. Commitment itself is a super daily decision, right? You just have to decide it every day, just the same way every day you have to decide, yes, I'm going to keep feeding my dog because I want that dog to live. I'm going to keep feeding my relationship because I want this relationship to live, right? And that is truly what commitment is. And when you have a romantic relationship, you're lacking that because you're just so high on the passion and the intimacy. And in the best kinds of romantic relationships, like I said, the commitment will grow, but it's not a guarantee. And a lot of relationships that get stuck here will fade without that commitment. Because if the passion just even gets lost a little bit, then there's no foundation to fall back on. And it's really hard for relationships to go backwards. I guess I should say that too. Like if you have a relationship that has passion and intimacy, it's really hard to, and it's not impossible, it's just difficult to go backwards. So to lose the passion and just stay intimate and stay friends is difficult. Not impossible, but it's difficult, right? Or if you lose the friendship and just want to have a sex relationship after that, you lose the intimacy. It would be hard to have just a sexual relationship with somebody that you were already once intimate with, feelings wise. So in this triangular theory of love, like if you've got two parts to the triangle, taking one away will almost always end the relationship rather than taking it back a step, because it's just really hard to go backwards. Again, not impossible, just really difficult. So the next one is, it's funny, every time I push a button, I can't see what's going on because the pictures of us are in the way. Yeah.
I just have two questions.
Please.
On the previous slide. So one of my questions is, how do you maintain, like for like just personal reference, like how do you maintain intimacy and passion every single day in a relationship? Just because being in a relationship, me being in a relationship as of right now, like I think about that, like further down the road, like what to do in our relationship to keep that. And then my second question is, why is there a stigma then towards like getting married, and why is it such a big deal to get married and to have a ring on your finger and to have that document? Like why is that so important if at the end of the day the commitment is within yourself, not a physical thing? I don't know.
Yeah, no, and you're asking a really good questions that I wish I had answers to.
I'm so sorry.
No, it's okay. These are kind of like, big questions that as one person I can't answer. Why is marriage so important to people in a way that it's such a societal norm, something that we're expected to do? God, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I God's honest, I think that the answer to that goes along with your question about why is there such a stigma about sex and having sex. because marriage legitimizes having sex for people. And so because of our Puritan beliefs in our society, marriage is the universal vehicle for it to be okay to have sex. And so I'd say that those two things are directly related. It's important to people that we get married so that we can legitimize the sex that we want to have. Because we live in a society that makes sex not okay, and especially not okay outside of marriage, right? And so it's a way to think marriage is a secret way for girls to be able to say they like sex without sounding like a slut. Wow, did I just say that out loud? I just said that out loud, but that's really, you know, I don't know why we put such an emphasis on marriage, because it really, at the end of the day, is not the be all end all. Commitment isn't about that piece of paper. And the worst part to me about the idea of marriage, and I'm married, so please know that, right? So keep that in mind when I say all this, but one of the worst things to me is that so many people spend their lives planning their wedding and caring about their wedding day and spending all this money and time on the wedding, but never plan their marriage. They spend all these hours talking about the perfect color and the perfect flowers and the perfect dress and who's going to sit where at the tables, but they don't spend that much time talking to their partner about what is our life going to be like and what are our goals together and who's going to take out the trash and who cleans the bathrooms and how are we going to resolve conflicts and all the important parts of keeping a marriage alive don't get discussed, but the color of the bridesmaid's dress, you know, that can be a 3-day discussion.
I'm actually going through that right now, or I just went through it. My fiance and I had this image in my head of what the wedding should be. And like you just said, it's not about the wedding, it's about the marriage. And we ended up changing our whole plans of having this big wedding to actually elope, because I was societally focused on what a wedding should be. And I'm just so happy that we were able to come to that conclusion, because I'm just really excited for our marriage instead of just this big day.
Yeah. That's so awesome. Congratulations.
Thank you.
It's a wonderful story. And I wish more people would do that, you know, think about that.
Yeah, I think
Did I just
going
cut-
along with, going along with that, it
No,
seems like,
please.
at least to me, a lot of relationships seem to be these really public things when it's, ideally primarily between two people, but then it's also like such a public ordeal, especially when you're getting married, that like, I feel like eloping kind of brings it back to that like commitment between, two or however many people, as opposed to it being like a thing that involves everyone and is kind of everyone's business, when it's, in some ways it is, but mostly isn't. And it's mostly, I think, should be a focus between the people that are in the relationship.
And I think also, Mandy, you bring up a great point about like when you're thinking about marriage, like worrying more about what the marriage is going to look like, because like figuring out who's going to take out the trash and who's going to wash the dishes and who's going to cook dinner, like all of that, I think also relates to the intimacy and the passion that is in a relationship. Because if there's not a common ground on like responsibilities and contribution to the relationship and the home, then if that deteriorates and that's not solid, then the intimacy and passion can immediately just go weary, because then you just feel like you have a roommate, not a partner.
Yes, and that's a perfect segue to the answering of the other part of your question, which was how do you keep the intimacy and passion alive? And one of my answers to you was going to be through appreciation. Appreciating the little things that people do for us. That helps with the passion, because passion is really easy to erode from little things that have nothing to do with passion, right? Just like you were saying, like you feel like you're pulling all the weight and your partner's not helping at home and you're doing everything. That erodes passion, because you're not feeling those, ooh, I just want to be around you. You're feeling these, ooh, you jerk. And it takes away from the passion. So one of the best things we can do for passion has nothing to do with sex, and that's to appreciate each other and notice the things that we're doing for each other. But related to sex and being physical, the other thing that one of the best things to me to keep passion and intimacy alive is to learn each other's love languages. And I don't know if you guys have explored love languages at all or heard about those. But, you know, all of us speak a different language of love, and that's basically the idea of what love looks like to us. You know, and some of us see receiving gifts as the way of showing love, and some of us are physical touch, and some of us like quality time, and some of us really like the words of affirmation and hearing nice things. But what your love language is how you want love to be given to you, but your partner's love language might be different. And learning their love language is part of intimacy. Learning what looks like love to them is part of intimacy, but then showing that to them is part of passion. So if you know that your partner's love language is acts of service, for example, then you know that doing the dishes, but without them asking, is going to be kind of a turn on to them. And not that they're going to jump your bones, but that they're going to appreciate that in a way that the passion is going to stay alive. You know, but if your love language is acts of service, and so you keep doing the dishes thinking that your partner is going to appreciate that, but their love language is physical touch, then the passion's going to erode for them because they don't feel loved. You're doing things that would make you feel loved, but you're not doing the things that make them feel loved. So it's really important that we, for the intimacy part, that we learn our partners and what makes them feel loved, but for the passion that we show that to them. And if our partner is a physical touch person, then we need to sit next to them and we need to hold their hand and we need to put our arms around them and give them little kisses and make sure that they feel loved by us, even if it's not how we would normally express love. You know, that's a really big piece of keeping passion alive is showing love the way your partner is going to receive it. Just, you know, it doesn't matter how much we love our partner, if they can't feel it because they speak a different language than us, then it's not there for them.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I think that's, or sorry, didn't mean to talk over you, a really important point. And I think that's something that's really important to remember for friendships as well. And just like relationships in general, just because I feel like recognizing the ways that you can be there for, you know, the people that you care about and the ways that will impact them the most is a really important thing to keep in mind, regardless of what kind of relationship it is.
Yes, 1000% that. Yes. And in real life, that when you talk about love languages aren't just about romantic or sexually intimate relationships at all. They're about how we appreciate everybody in our lives and show that to them. It's something that's kind of interesting. I could talk about love languages all day. I don't know why I didn't think of that as my topic, but you know, it's interesting because most of us don't think of love languages because we usually speak the same love language as our parents because they're the ones that taught us love. And so growing up, it's not something we have to think about too much because our parents usually love us the way we understand love because we learned what love is from the way our parents express love to us. Do you know what I mean? Like if your parents hugged you a lot, then you learned that hugs were love. And so you got hugs from your parents and so you always felt loved and you never really had to think about what love looks like until you move on from those relationships and start getting in relationships with other people. And you're like, hey, I'm not getting the things I'm used to that say love to me. And that's when you start realizing, wait, there's things I need that I didn't realize I needed because I used to just get. And it's just something that like most people don't realize until they get a little older and start having relationships outside of their family, you know. But yeah, love language. If you don't know what those are, haven't heard too much about them, there's a whole book that's really cool stuff. You can take tests to learn what yours are. And there's lots of free online tests and things like that to learn about what your love language is. So, okay. Man, we're definitely getting a lot of good discussion in here. I somehow in my head thought this presentation was just going to go zippity zop, all quick like, but I've been teaching 16 years. I should know better than to think that anything's going to go quick like I think it will. Okay, so the next one, it has intimacy and commitment, but no passion. What do you guys think that one might be? Here's your little clue at the bottom. So it says sometimes in a relationship, the desire for passion is there, but the ability is not, meaning this style of love sometimes happens because of life circumstances as much as because of choice or anything like that. But out of those words and things, what do you think would be an intimacy and commitment, but no passion?
Maybe companionate.
Yep, exactly. Very nice. You guys are nailing this game. Companionate love absolutely is like a really good long-term best friend. You know, you've known them forever. They are your bestie for life. There's no coming between you. You know everything there is to know about each other, and you are committed for life. And this can be a marriage, right? This can be a marriage where somebody maybe gets injured and no longer can be physical. It could be a choice. It could be age, where both partners are just like, yeah, we don't really care that much about the sex anymore. We still love each other and still want to be in it for the long haul. We're never leaving, but you know, if the sex isn't there anymore, so be it. And again, as long as both people in the relationship are okay with that missing piece, perfectly good relationship. But this is one of those hard ones where if you're you're committed, you're in a relationship, all that, and the sex leaves because of something beyond people's control. The commitment for some people is really hard to keep, right? Because they may not want to live in a relationship where they don't get to have sex, even though they still love and very much care for the person that they're in a relationship for. For some people, missing that piece is too big of a deal. And for other people, this is the kind of relationship that might open up a marriage or open up a relationship to, you know, maybe having a third partner come in who could take care of the passion, but not have the commitment or intimacy or things like that. So this style of love and relationship is one of the styles that for a lot of couples who still want passion, but for some reason medically or whatever can't have that, this is the style that is higher likelihood of opening up into maybe a more polyamorous or open marriage type of relationship in order to fulfill those needs without losing the commitment and then the intimacy that you have with that partner. But again, if two people are okay with that, but also know that this style of love is truly like the platonic best friend. Like, you know, this is your best friend you grew up with that your kids are going to call aunt or uncle. It's that I guess in the words of Grey's Anatomy, this is my person, you know. I don't know if you guys are Grey's Anatomy fans or people who watch that, but these are my people. They're just the best friend you could possibly have. Okay, the next one has passion, commitment, and no intimacy. So it can be a lot of fun, but it's not very
Would that
deep.
be empty?
That's not empty, but that's a really good guess because this would feel empty to a lot of people.
Maybe non-love then?
Another really good guess, but also not right. This one is called fatuous. And this is basically one of those like relationships that starts off really fast and happens really fast and everything about it is fast. And that's why there's no intimacy, is because it happens so fast that they don't even have time to get to know each other. You know, this might be that like you met, they're like, but we fell in love the minute we met, we locked eyes, we're in love, and they're moved in with each other 2 weeks later. And everything about it, you're like, what, and weren't you just single like 2 days ago? And now you're like living with, okay. You know, it's that kind of relationship, and it just happens so quickly that there's no time to get to know each other. And in a lot of cases, this kind of relationship will end when the people get to know each other. Because then they'll realize they have nothing in common and they have nothing to build from except passion. And that passion might get them to commit to each other. Like, I really love this. And it's kind of like that infatuation relationship that started with just passion, that the people who were in it didn't realize they were just infatuated. They thought they were in love. Like, they were so deep in that infatuation, they thought it was love. And so they went ahead and committed to each other. And then after the commitment, they're like, oh, actually turns out I don't know anything about you, and I don't actually like anything about you. Again, this one can work for some people, that there's, you know, for a lot of people, this style works because they, again, that for some people, the fear of being intimate with somebody means, hey, let's have sex together and nothing more for a long time. You know, we can do this for a long time. You can be my you know, my screw buddy for a long time, but I don't ever want anything more than that. And a lot of people do have this person that they hang on to for years, and that maybe is their in-between relationships person, you know, that they fall back to. And it's somebody that they know they have passion with, and it's somebody that they know they can always go to, regardless of how many months or years it's been, because they have that commitment to each other, but they just don't really know each other. And in a lot of cases, don't care to know each other. They don't want that piece of things. And some people, unfortunately, do fall into this, not realizing they're missing the intimacy. They are mistaking their passion for intimacy and thinking that all that sex means that they know each other really well. And that's when we get into those kinds of committed relationships that end fairly quickly, when they realize they don't know each other at all or have anything in common. Okay, the next one has all three. It's got intimacy, passion, and commitment. This is kind of the home run of love. And of course, I left my list off this slide. So with no list to guess, this one is called consummate love. And this is truly like the what everybody wants. And I say that in quotations because every style of love, there's somebody out there who's purposely looking for that, right? This is not necessarily what everybody wants, but this is the style that we think of when we think of what everybody's looking for. So like the ideal relationship would have intimacy, it's got passion, and it's got commitment. It's got somebody you want to, you know really well, and you want to continue to know really well, and you want to physically be with them, and you're committed for the long haul of it. You know that you don't have to worry about each other or mistrust each other, just that everything is there. And this is, again, this is kind of that idea of what most everybody is looking for in the long term. When we think of what is love, love is going to have all three of these, you know. Those other styles that we talked about are forms of love by all means, but this is the holy grail or the home run. This is the everything a person would want. However, I have to stress again that this takes work. This is not just falls into your lap. Wasn't it great that we have intimacy, passion, and commitment? It takes daily work to maintain that commitment, that passion, and that intimacy. You know, it's asking, how are you doing today? How was your day? What was it like? It's texting your partner in the middle of the day to tell them some funny anecdote of what you just saw or happened, or the video you saw, so that you can keep that intimacy of, this is how my day is going, and this is what my life is like when you're not in it. You know, and keeping that passion alive, even if you're long distance or don't see each other every day, by sending that quick "I love you" text, or "I'm thinking of you," or you know, maybe sending a risque picture, or whatever it is that you do. And maybe it's going home at the end of the day and cuddling them and doing, you know, being physical with them because they are present, but keeping that alive. And then, like I was talking about earlier, making that decision every day that this is the relationship I want to be in, and I'm going to work for it, and I'm going to keep working for it, because none of these things come easy. And in any relationship that has all three, on any given day, there might be a different level of any one of these components. You know, you might have just recently gotten into a fight, so you still have intimacy and commitment, but maybe the passion is waning a little bit right now because words were exchanged. Or maybe you had a really great weekend away together where there was tons of intimacy and tons of passion, but the commitment piece wasn't really thought about. You guys weren't expressing how you're going to stay together forever. You were really just engrossed in the intimacy and the passion. And in any relationship, those levels of any one of these three components kind of move, and they, you know, they're not static, and they're not always high, and it's not always perfect. And it takes work to maintain all three of these components. But when you can find it, this is what people live for. This is the kind of love that songs are written about, and the kind of, you know, love that movies are about. And this is the love that inspires, like truly inspires and helps us grow as people, which in my opinion is what love is for, is to help us be the best versions of ourselves that we can be. That's just a personal opinion though. So the other two styles of love, I'm just going to quick go through. This one has commitment and nothing else. So this is like the people that they have no intimacy anymore, they have no passion anymore, but they're staying together because they said they would. They are staying married because they have kids together, or they're staying married because their religion says that they can't divorce, or whatever other excuse people give themselves for staying in relationships that no longer have any intimacy or passion. They're just committed to being with one another. And we call that kind of empty. That's an empty relationship. There's nothing there. There's no substance. There's nobody that you're talking to or sharing your life with. This is that roommate. This is a long-term roommate. You know, they're part of your lives, and you probably communicate on a daily basis about dinner or groceries or whatever daily kinds of things. But there's no caring or love or passion or intimacy at all. And these are to me personally some of the most sad and lonely relationships. Because we all need an intimacy, you know, we all need a best friend, somebody that we can talk to. Passion's not a requirement for everybody, but we're social creatures as humans, and intimacy is an important aspect of that. And to lack that in one of your most important relationships, I think would be one of the most lonely things to endure. That's just me. You know, if I found myself in this relationship, I don't think I'd stay. Commitment would go away just as fast as the other two for me. But some people really feel that commitment and the need to stay. And again, it seems sad to me, but if both people agree that they're staying in this and that they don't need the intimacy and passion, who am I to say that that's wrong for them? You know, that's, as long as the two people are okay and happy, then any relationship works. And the last one has nothing. There's no intimacy, there's no passion, and there's no commitment. And so we call this one non-love. And this ideally would make the relationship end. Like if you've got none of the things, hopefully there's no reason to keep trying to stay together or pretending that this is happening. This is the erosion of the relationship and the end of the relationship. Unfortunately though, the hard part about this style is that it's the hardest to accept for most people. It's the hardest to accept that it's over and that none of the things are there anymore. You know, it's really easy to like think about, let's end this relationship or whatever, but to actually accept it in your heart that this thing is over and that none of those things exist anymore, that can be really hard for a lot of people to deal with. And so this is the place where some people will deny and fight and pretend and say, no, but I still love you and I still have this passion. But in a lot of ways, I'm a pretty firm believer, and there's exceptions to everything, and I'm not always right, so keep that in mind too, right? But I'm personally a pretty big believer that there's a book, it's called It's Broken, you broke up because it's broken. It's a breakup because it's broken, right? And I'm usually a pretty big believer in that if you broke up and there was none of these things there was a reason, and it's probably not worth fighting for. And if you do fight for it, what will happen to a lot of relationships is they get back together and it ends very quickly again, because they realize, oh yeah, we didn't like each other. We weren't supposed to be in this. There was a reason we broke up. But non-love gets kind of like fought against by a lot of people when they want to deny that their relationship is over. So this is another just kind of hard place for a lot of people to make acceptance for themselves. So those are the 8 styles or styles of love based on Sternberg's triangle. Would love to hear any more questions or thoughts or anything you guys have about any of that or anything else really. I'm going to stop sharing my screen too. Somebody's about to talk.
So why only 3? Like, what if there's a
4th component.
what if it's a 4th component?
What do you think that 4th component would be?
I don't know. My question is like, why only 3?
Robert Sternberg was a psychologist.
Mm-hmm.
And this is just basically the theory of love that he came up with based on his experience and in talking to people. You guys have all kinds of questions that I don't know how to answer. I love it. It's great. That's the best kind of questions, truly. Questions that have answers, or I don't know. I like questions that have no answers, but I guess I don't really know why he came up with 3 and only 3, but those are the things that I guess he was seeing when he was seeing his patients, and he was a relationships type of psychologist, like a marriage psychologist type guy. And those were what he kept seeing over and over in relationships. Those were the 3 things that he, I guess, boiled it down to when people would describe their relationships and what parts they had. Those are the 3 things that they all had in common, I guess. Yeah, I mean, I wish I could ask the dude. For me, one of the reasons I like this theory so much is because for me, it really makes sense,
Yeah.
I can picture every relationship I've ever had being one of those. And I'm 46 and I've been through a lot of relationships. I didn't get married till about 6 years ago. And so I've been probably in every one of those, and I can see exactly, I can feel it. I'm like, oh, I remember that relationship. That was exactly that passion or that, that infatuation or, so for me, this just has always really struck a chord because I see myself in it, I guess is the best way I can put it. So it resonates with me personally. So I know that's why I like it. Is it seems to make sense to me. So yeah.
Yeah, I hadn't heard of this before, but I feel like it is a really interesting way to kind of categorize relationships and and I think also to just identify if you're in a relationship with somebody and something seems kind of off, to kind of see, what exactly is kind of missing and what, you can kind of do about that and I think it kind of provides a lens for people to look at their own relationships from sort of an outside point of view, kind of to an extent, which is I think really interesting, and just kind of provides a way for people to look at their relationships from a different angle.
Yeah, it's a great analysis tool for analyzing any relationship you're in. I also think that it can be a good tool for when you're talking to friends and you see something amiss in your friend's relationship, but you don't really know how to word it, and you don't want to say, God, this is a bad relationship for you, and not have anything to back it up with. This can be a really good way to try to express it to a friend, hey, I'm not I know what you think you have is this great thing, but I don't see that you have any intimacy with your partner. They don't know you, or something like that, where it kind of gives a voice, I feel like, to explaining why some relationships aren't doing well. Thanks. And so, for me, it's not just about analyzing your own relationship, but it's also a way to help others when you see other people struggling,
I have a question.
Yeah.
What do you think the best thing to do would be? Like, what would you recommend if like people in a relationship both categorize their relationship as different styles of love and like couldn't agree on what it was?
That's a really good question. I would say that relationship needs a lot of communication. You know, that the best thing that those two people can do is sit down and really talk about what they're seeing and what they're like. If they're both seeing a different thing lacking in their relationship, then there's probably a bigger problem with communication overall. You know what I mean? And so to me, that's a we need to talk moment. You know, and we need to sit down and have this conversation that if you're feeling like there's no passion, but I'm feeling like there's no intimacy, then what can we do? And that's a time in a relationship where it's really important to maybe use some I statements and express how you're feeling without trying to offend the other person. You know, like, I'm feeling unloved because we're not holding hands anymore, and we're not doing some of the physical things that I need to feel loved. And then the partner can say, well, I'm not feeling, you know, I'm feeling like unheard because you don't ask me about my day anymore. And you know, that kind of conversation can get to the bottom of why one person isn't feeling passion and another person isn't feeling the intimacy. But it's one of those, you have to be brave enough to express what you're really feeling conversations. You know, you have to be brave enough to say, I'm feeling this right now. And that's where I'm at. I'm feeling a lack of passion because of this, you know. And for some people, those conversations can be really difficult to really just express what you're feeling and what you're feeling is lacking, because it's for a lot of people very hard to express what you're feeling if it means that somebody else is doing something wrong, you know. And that's where I statements can come in really handy, is just to express it through the I feels. I feel this way because of, you know, I feel unloved when we don't touch every day. It's not anybody's fault. That's just a thing. And if we start touching more, hey, I'll feel loved again, you know. But I do think it has to come down to those conversations and really being strong and brave enough to tell your partner what you feel is lacking or what you are needing. Because sometimes it's not about voicing it in a way of what's lacking, but just in I really need more physical touch. You know, that's something I just need. And maybe expressing it that way, but also just being brave enough to express yourself. I think that in a lot of relationships, that's the thing that's the hardest for people. And that's the thing that makes a lot of relationships end, is just a lack of communication and being able to express how you feel without it causing a fight between two people, you know, because a lot of times when we try to express how we feel, we're just blaming the other person. You made me so mad, instead of being like, I feel angry because, and so, and because so many people have had bad experiences trying to have those conversations, I think a lot of people then get scared of bringing them up again. And I truly believe that lack of communication in most relationships is one of the biggest problems that we have in all relationships. It's just not communicating enough.
Does anybody else have any other questions or like, do you have any, you know, final things you want to say? Sorry, I wasn't sure if Amari was going to talk or not. I think that was just like a random hand event, but yeah.
I mean, I don't necessarily have anything else to say per se.
Then I think that if nobody has any other questions, we can wrap up.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for what you guys do. I think this is the coolest thing. And I want to throw out here that Betsy and I have talked about the possibility of asking any one of you or all of you if you would be interested in being on our podcast, because we've talked about maybe even having a panel of youth on one episode and having more than one person talk about your experience doing this. And don't feel like you'd have to do that right away. I know this is still a new thing, but just something to keep in mind, because we'd love to have some youth voices in our podcast, since our whole purpose of our podcast is to educate youth. We would love to have some young voices. And so like our new season is all interviews and stuff. And we were talking about how cool it would be to have a panel of you guys on talking about what you're doing and stuff like that. So something to think about, and we're going to throw out there, because we'd love to just know that's an open invite. If anybody's interested, just let us know. It is a completely open invite. So, but thank you again for inviting me to do this. This was a lot of fun. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for talking. Your presentation was great. Learned a lot. I bet everybody did. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Well, have a great night, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.